Rising sea levels are one of the most pressing and visible consequences of climate change, posing significant risks to coastal communities, ecosystems, and economies around the world. The phenomenon is not new. Sea levels have fluctuated throughout Earth's history due to natural processes. However, the current trend of rising sea levels is largely driven by human activities, and the pace at which it is occurring is unprecedented. To understand the full scope of this issue, it's essential to explore the historical context, examine the current situation, and consider the future implications of rising sea levels. Sea levels have naturally risen and fallen over geological timescales due to various factors such as tectonic activity, changes in Earth's orbit, and variations in solar radiation. During the last ice age, for example, sea levels were significantly lower because large volumes of water were locked in ice sheets. As the Ice Age ended approximately 11,700 years ago, the Earth entered a warmer period, leading to the melting of these ice sheets and a subsequent rise in sea levels. However, the sea level rise that has occurred since the Industrial Revolution is different from these natural fluctuations. The burning of fossil fuels, deforestation, and other human activities have dramatically increased the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, leading to global warming. The average global temperature has risen by approximately 1.2 degrees Celsius since the late 19th century, with significant consequences for sea levels. Two primary factors have contributed to the observed rise in sea levels over the past century: thermal expansion and the melting of glaciers and ice sheets. As the Earth's atmosphere warms, the oceans absorb much of this heat, causing seawater to expand, a process known as thermal expansion. Simultaneously, rising temperatures have accelerated the melting of land-based ice, particularly in Greenland and Antarctica, adding more water to the oceans. Historical data reveals that global sea levels rose by about 15 to 20 centimeters, 6 to 8 inches, during the 20th century. While this may not seem like a substantial increase, it has already had significant impacts on coastal areas, leading to more frequent and severe flooding, erosion, and the intrusion of saltwater into freshwater systems. In recent decades, the rate of sea level rise has accelerated, reflecting the intensifying effects of climate change. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, sea levels rose by approximately 3.7 millimeters per year from 2006 to 2018, nearly double the average rate during the 20th century. This acceleration is largely due to the continued melting of glaciers and ice sheets, particularly in Greenland, which is losing ice at an alarming rate. Recent studies suggest that Greenland's ice sheet is shedding approximately 280 billion metric tons of ice per year, contributing to about 0.8 millimeters of sea level rise annually. Similarly, Antarctica, which holds the largest reservoir of ice on the planet, is experiencing rapid ice loss, particularly in the West Antarctic ice sheet. If this sheet were to collapse completely, it could lead to a global sea level rise of several meters. While such a scenario would unfold over centuries, the current trends are concerning enough to warrant immediate attention. Thermal expansion also remains a significant driver of sea level rise. The oceans have absorbed more than 90% of the excess heat generated by human activities since the 1970s. As the oceans continue to warm, thermal expansion will contribute to ongoing sea level rise even if greenhouse gas emissions were to be curbed drastically today. The impacts of current sea level rise are already being felt around the world. Coastal communities, particularly in low-lying areas, are experiencing more frequent and severe flooding. In the United States, for example, cities like Miami, New York, and New Orleans are grappling with the challenges of rising waters. Miami, often referred to as ground zero for sea level rise, regularly experiences sunny day flooding, where high tides cause streets to flood even in the absence of rain. Beyond the United States, many island nations are facing existential threats due to rising sea levels. Countries like the Maldives, Kiribati, and Tuvalu are among the most vulnerable, as even a modest rise in sea levels could submerge large portions of their landmass, displacing entire populations and potentially rendering these nations uninhabitable. Looking to the future, the trajectory of sea level rise will largely depend on the actions taken to address climate change. The IPCC's most recent report outlines several scenarios based on different levels of greenhouse gas emissions. In a best-case scenario, where global warming is limited to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, sea levels are projected to rise by approximately 30 to 60 centimeters, 1 to 2 feet, by 2100. This scenario would still pose significant challenges for coastal communities, but the impacts could be managed with sufficient adaptation measures, such as building seawalls, restoring wetlands, and implementing managed retreat strategies. However, if global temperatures continue to rise unchecked, leading to a warming of 3–4 degrees Celsius, sea levels could rise by as much as 1 to 2 meters, 3 to 6 feet, by the end of the century. Such a scenario would have catastrophic consequences for millions of people living in coastal areas. Major cities like Tokyo, Mumbai, Shanghai, and London could face widespread inundation, leading to massive displacement and economic losses. Beyond 2100, the long-term outlook is even more concerning. The melting of the Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets could trigger irreversible changes in the Earth's climate system, leading to multi-meter sea level rise over the next several centuries. This would reshape coastlines, submerge entire islands, and create millions of climate refugees. Moreover, rising sea levels will exacerbate other climate-related challenges. Higher sea levels increase the risk of storm surges, making coastal storms and hurricanes more destructive. This was vividly illustrated by Hurricane Sandy in 2012, which caused widespread devastation in the northeastern United States. As sea levels continue to rise, the destructive potential of such storms will only grow, leading to more frequent and severe disasters. The human and economic costs. The human and economic costs of rising sea levels are staggering. According to the World Bank, if current trends continue, the global cost of adapting to sea level rise could reach $1 trillion annually by 2050. This includes the costs of building infrastructure to protect coastal cities, relocating communities, and managing the impacts on agriculture, fisheries, and tourism. For vulnerable populations, particularly in developing countries, the impacts will be even more severe. Many coastal communities lack the resources to adapt to rising sea levels, making them highly susceptible to displacement, poverty, and food insecurity. The social and political consequences of mass displacement due to rising sea levels could lead to increased migration, conflict, and instability in many regions. Efforts to mitigate and adapt. Given the magnitude of the challenges posed by rising sea levels, it is clear that both mitigation and adaptation efforts are essential. Mitigation involves reducing greenhouse gas emissions to slow the rate of global warming and, by extension, the pace of sea level rise. This requires a global commitment to transitioning away from fossil fuels, enhancing energy efficiency, and investing in renewable energy sources. At the same time, adaptation strategies are crucial to managing the impacts of rising sea levels. Coastal cities around the world are already implementing a range of adaptation measures, including building sea walls, elevating buildings, and restoring natural barriers like mangroves and coral reefs. In some cases, governments are considering more drastic measures, such as relocating entire communities away from vulnerable coastal areas. In the face of rising sea levels, innovation and technology will play a critical role. Advances in climate modeling, satellite monitoring, and engineering are providing new tools to predict and respond to sea level rise. For example, the use of living shorelines, which incorporate natural features like wetlands and dunes, is gaining traction as a sustainable way to protect coastlines while preserving ecosystems. International cooperation is also essential. Rising sea levels are a global challenge that requires coordinated action. The Paris Agreement, adopted in 2015, represents a significant step in this direction, with countries committing to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius. However, achieving these goals will require sustained effort and increased ambition from all nations. Rising sea levels are one of the most visible and impactful consequences of climate change, with profound implications for the future of our planet. What has happened in the past provides a stark warning of what could occur if current trends continue unchecked. The situation today is one of urgency, with sea levels rising at an accelerating pace, threatening coastal communities, economies, and ecosystems worldwide. The future of sea level rise will depend on the actions we take today. If we can limit global warming and implement effective adaptation strategies, we may be able to manage the impacts and protect vulnerable communities. However, if we fail to act, the consequences could be catastrophic, leading to widespread displacement, economic loss, and environmental degradation. As we look to the future, it is clear that rising sea levels are not just a distant threat, they are a present reality that requires immediate attention. The choices we make now will determine the fate of millions of people and the health of our planet for generations to come. If you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more.